Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Africa-Europe D4D Hub Multi-Stakeholders Forum site session on digital entrepreneurship and innovation. My name is Asma Banouli. I'm the manager in charge of the deployment of the Orange Digital Centers in the Middle East and Africa region at Orange Middle East and Africa. I'm excited to be your moderator for today's session, a space where we will discuss investing in digital skills to unleash Africa's digital entrepreneurship and innovation potential. First, I would like to introduce our panelists. A warm welcome to Agnieszka Skoratovic, who is the head of the Youth, Education and Culture Unit of the DG INTPA at the European Commission. We're also joined by Asman Naifer, Director of CSR and Communication and Director of Orange Digital Center at Orange Middle East and Africa. We also have with us Michael Nijtejka, from Program Director of Refactory. We're also joined by Professor Henk Gerard Sol, Emeritus Professor of Business Engineering and ICT at Groningen University. And last but not least, we welcome Grant Kazawanjit, the Global Coordinator of the Global Campaign for Education. Thank you all for joining us. Before we begin, I wanted to point out that our session will be conducted in English and partly in French, and that simultaneous translation is available in both languages. I would also like to invite our audience to ask their questions in the chat as we go along in the discussions, so that we can address them to our panelists. Thank you.
Now hand over the floor to Asma Naifer for the introduction on her efforts. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, dear all. My name is Asma Naifer. I am the Director for External Relations, CSR and Innovation at Orange Tunisia. Thank you, first of all, to the organizers for this event that gives us the opportunity to exchange on crucial subjects, meaning digital competences as a factor for a potential of innovation and entrepreneurial efforts in the digital sector in Africa. You know, the digital revolution is one of the biggest challenges that we're confronted with. And I can tell you that public-private partnerships can be really efficient to do so. I'm a representative of it. I mean, the biggest challenge is training in the digital sectors in Africa. Up to 2030, 230 million jobs will be created in the digital sectors. In comparison, on the whole African continent, youth joblessness is quite high. So in the framework of the big and very quick economic development of the African economy, the digital sector offers new opportunities, but also challenges in the view of the needs that the sector has. Orange is a private telecommunication company, and as a private partner, everybody, we give a lot of responsibilities to all our partners. We have set up an CSR strategies in order also to promote youth and also access to internet, especially in the rural areas and also in the smart factors. We have developed in Africa in the cheapest smartphone in Africa in 2019. We also developed international cyber blockchain, etc., other applications. We have expertise in Orange Labs in order to allow to develop the newest technologies. One of our flagship developments have been launched on the matters. We will really confront the challenges of digital and really include the youth people in order to increase their employabilities, create jobs, and also promote innovative startups on the continent. So I will have the opportunity to have more in detail our work on the African continent if you like to following this session.
Merci, Asma. Now that we have examined what are the challenges, let's continue with two practical solutions which have been developed to equip the African youth with digital skills and help them fulfill their innovation potential. We will start with a presentation of Refactory with Michael Naitejika. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you very much. A great pleasure for me to be part of this conversation this afternoon, where we're exploring the practicality of enhancing digital skills. Refactory started off as a program that was specifically geared towards addressing the talent gap or the challenge that we have in industry. And the challenge was that there was a huge gap between people that are completing university and those that are required by the industry. And as the tech ecosystem was growing, it was becoming apparent that we need to do something. And so we worked with industry partners to design what I would call a unique program that is responsive to the unique needs of our market. And for the last 3 years, we've been training people and largely focusing on software engineering as a requirement. Why? Because we believe that's a great opportunity for us as a market to tap into. And for the last 3 years, we've trained over 300 people. And of the 300 people, we've seen close to 80 to 90% find employment within the first 6 months. The other thing that we've also noticed is that from industry, we were told, the feedback was that it used to take between 1.5 years, between 1 to 1.5 years to get a fresh university graduate into a software engineering role, get them ready to start working directly or become productive with industry. What we've seen in terms of feedback from industry is that the people that hire our graduates, it takes less than 6 months to get them into a productive mode. So we are cutting down the time it takes for fresh IT software engineering graduates to become productive and therefore contribute to the bottom line of the business. And finally, is that we are now beginning to build more programs that speak to the opportunity in the space of higher technical skills. And so in this year, we are going to start data science, blockchain engineering, DevOps. Why? Because the industry is also challenging us to deliver a little bit more than we previously were doing. So yeah, happy to explore more, but that's generally what we're looking at, and pretty excited to look at the opportunities to collaborate.
Thank you, Michael, for your inputs. Very interesting to hear about these concrete ways that the Refactory program helps you to develop software development and employability skills.
I'd like to give the floor to Asma and Ifer to present another major initiative in Africa and the Middle East, the Orange Digital Center program. Thank you, Asma. Indeed, as we said earlier, digital technology is an essential catalyst for the development of African countries. At Orange, digital inclusion of African populations is one of our greatest challenges. Our main objective is to reduce the digital divide and bring digital access to you young people, to women, and to people living in rural areas. With this in mind, we have developed the Orange Digital Center program, one of the main pillars of digital inclusion in the Orange strategy Engage 2025. It is interesting to note that Orange Digital Center is first and foremost an African project, since it was initiated in Tunisia and has been deployed in all 18 African and Middle Eastern countries where Orange operates. It is currently being exported from the African continent to the European continent due to its success. What is Orange Digital Center? It is an innovative ecosystem that ranges from training, coaching on soft skills, to supporting, accelerating, and investing in startups. It is a comprehensive program from start to finish, from training through business incubation to acceleration and investment in startups. Thus, it brings together 4 strategic groups of people with different levels of digital skills by allowing them to work on real projects with social impact. What can you expect to find in an Orange Digital Center? There's a school for coding, for the software part, a fab lab for the hardware part, so basically for everything that has to do with prototypes, a startup accelerator called Orange Fab, which is part of the Orange Fab network of the Orange Group, an investment fund of the Orange Group called Orange Venture, which invests in the most innovative startups. So as you can see, it is a comprehensive program from start to finish. In addition, we have signed partnership agreements with several universities and engineering schools throughout the different countries. Why is that? To ensure that as many students as possible benefit from our program. We're positioned somewhere between universities, the country school system, and the job market. And what we do is training young people in a practical, real way so that they are ready for the job market. The objective of these trainings is technical training, training in real project mode, and especially training in soft skills. Why do we do this? Because today's job market needs young people to be operational right away. And that is why at the end of the training courses we run at the Orange Digital Centers, we hold speed recruiting days, where Orange invites all its partners to come and recruit its cohorts. Learners benefit from free training because the whole Orange Digital Center experience is free and open to all. So there are different levels, a beginner's level, intermediate level, and an advanced level. And we offer support for employment and the launch of startups. The goal is to create a digital ecosystem by encouraging entrepreneurship in the different countries where we are operating. These trainings are mainly given by experts, Orange volunteers from the ODC, but also throughout the country, and we mainly target children. And therefore, we have digital schools that are equipped with tablets with educational and edutainment content that is accessible and doesn't necessarily require an internet connection. We also address women, which is one of the key topics at the Orange Digital Center. And why do we have positive discrimination in favor of women? Because young women are not always ready to go into technological professions and trainings. So we have specific training programs for young women to encourage them to go to universities and to pursue technical training.
Why? Often the women are not open to this digital formations, and so we encourage women to go into the digital field in universities and also pick up learn technical professions. So we open all these also regional schools in the regions. There are a lot of activities already in the capitals, in the universities, in the regions, in order to reach the highest numbers of young people. In the Orange Digital Centers, you also have technological equipment that the young people cannot find or access anywhere else because it's just too expensive for them. Orange Digital Centers has been one of the nicest, most beautiful realizations in our CSR field in order to permit and obtain digital equality up to 2025. We want to deploy the Tunisia these Orange Digital Centers in all the countries we're active in, and reach a number of 32 digital centers as well. In general, they have centers that have 500 to 6,000 square meters. The young people can come to centers entirely for free, and in the centers, experts are present to train them, to support them, to help them. If, for example, a young person wants to open his own startups, there are experts that welcome them, that support them, accompany them from the first idea up to the creation, the setting up of a startup business. Today, Orange Digital Center is a network. It is really the strength of the Orange Group in Africa that is present in Africa, in Europe, and in France. And the Orange Digital Centers is a French network in Africa, Middle East, and Europe. And these startups, the young people, can also work together in this network, especially find, for example, contacts companies. Well, let's say European companies need resources for coding, for example. And it is the real link between Africa and Europe. Today, we don't have to travel anymore. We can code in our own country and code for Europe and the other way around. And African startups need markets in Europe, which facilitates really this win-win situation in the cooperation between the two continents. I think it's a very important strength within the Orange Digital Center. We deployed already 11 digital centers in Africa, together with GIZ, German Development Corporation. Other Orange Digital Centers will be operational in the next few months. On 14 of 18 countries of the region, Africa and the Middle East, we cooperate with German development corporations, and really thank them. We started to launch this project together with the GIZ. They really believed in our project. They really invested in us. They believed in our capacity of training these young Africans to permit them to have jobs of high added values in Africa, to develop their own countries and also their own autonomy and empowerment thanks to these digital trainings. And this, I believe, is very important to have. Therefore, I believe it's so important to have private partnerships with governments, with academia, with the technological partners, with the private sector. This is exactly what we do. We concluded a partnership with Amazon services, for example, for all ODCs and to offer all young people who participate in the trainings, in cloud trainings. It's a 3-month training. They have a certificate. And after the certification, after the diploma, those young people have the possibility to find jobs. You have to understand that we try to have high-level partners to allow these young people to have diplomas, to have a good level of training, to really have jobs, to obtain jobs of high added value. We also signed a partnership with the European Union in the framework of the tender Open Innovation Hub in order to implement this concept in different regions and attract more women and children to these trainings and make sure that they have more deployment, more grades, etc. Graduations. It's a real flagship program of the Tunisia Orange Digital Center. In the pandemic situations, it adjusted very quickly to the situations via an interactive training platform. Experts are in front of their computers, dispense practical trainings. It's not only about digital content, but really have experts in front of you, just as if the young people were here in the centers with us. So we adjusted very quickly to the COVID-19 situations and set up the different things, and also signed an agreement with the African Union went on the basis of their efforts to set up digital platforms. Of course, the success depends on different factors. First of all, the participations and continuousness of the private sector, especially those who have exact knowledge of the local situations and the populations. It's also important that this program not only addresses the capitals in Africa, but also the disadvantaged parts of the population. This is why we started the digital clubs in the regions and Africas. There again, I'd like to thank the German Development corporations for the realization and support of this project within the Orange Digital Centers. You need to know that there's a budget of 30 million euro that's been agreed between us, the GIZ, and the German Federal Ministry for Development and Cooperation. And that is only for the region of Africa and the Middle East. We hope to continue the concretization with GIZ for an increase of digitization in our countries, reduce youth joblessness, and also stimulate the creation of startups and young enterprises. I think it's very, very important to work hand in hand with the different donors, with the different technological partners in order to reach the highest number of young people in Africa. As I've said, there are up to 230 million young people in the next few years who come to the job market. They all need digital capacities, digital knowledge in order to find jobs of higher added value. And I think the African youth really needs our support. We as Orange Group, the fact that we're already present in these countries helps us to set up our Orange Digital Centers and also to reach the highest number of young people. And I encourage all institutions, private actors, etc., donors, in order to invest and support even more in the young people, for them to get more digital, get a better level of this. And so thank you very much.
Merci, Asma. Many thanks for you, Asma and Michael, for sharing these concrete initiatives on the ground that are powered by Orange Digital Centers and Refactory. I'm starting to see some comments, some interest and questions regarding Refactory and Orange Digital Center, and I hope that we will get the time to answer all the questions before the end of our session. So without further ado, let's jump into our panel discussion. Let's maybe start with Agnieszka for some insights on the EU's approach to digital entrepreneurship, with a question targeted on the topic of inclusion. Agnieszka, in the process of digital inclusion and access to digital skills, how to make sure that women and disadvantaged groups are included in the EU's initiatives and policies supporting digital entrepreneurship?
Thank you very much, Asma, and thank you for this question. It is indeed a key one if we want to have a just, inclusive and sustainable digital transition in all our countries. And it is a good one to build on Madame Asma's presentation on the Orange Digital Centers as well. The answer to the question is very much linked to the big challenge of tackling the digital divide. First, there is a digital divide according to the level of country's income. In high-income countries, 86% of school-age children have internet access at home. In low-income and lower-middle-income countries, this is respectively only 6 and 14% of the school-age children. This digital divide is further compounded by inequalities within the countries. Home internet access for the 15 to 24 years old among the poorest 20% of households in sub-Saharan Africa is either non-existent or almost non-existent, while children and young people from wealthier households enjoy high rates of internet access. There is also a significant rural-urban divide. In West and Central Africa, for example, only 2% of children living in rural areas have internet access at home, compared to 11% in urban areas. So there is a 5 times difference. And on top of this, we have the gender divide. Women living in rural or remote areas accumulate a triple digital, gender, and rural discrimination, facing huge barriers in access and use of digital technologies due to unaffordability, low digital literacy, and restrictive social norms. Another important barrier is tech-facilitated gender-based violence, which is increasingly affecting women and girls' participation in the online world. The perfect illustration of gender divide is the huge underrepresentation in ICT careers of women. Men are 4 times more likely to be an ICT specialist. So what to do? First and foremost, raising awareness of this digital divide, recognizing its importance while we put forward measures supporting digital entrepreneurship. The role of the discussions that we are having today is crucial, going well beyond the tech questions. Yes, we need to invest in equal access to affordable, stable, and high-speed internet, both in rural and urban areas. We need to start teaching digital literacy or basic digital skills in primary and secondary education already at this level to ensure that all young learners are digitally empowered. The use of digital technologies for active learning must be enhanced at all levels of education and not only start in the tertiary. A special focus should be given indeed to girls to make also sure they continue their education at the university level. But we must also address the adverse gender norms and stereotypes and ensure that women and girls have access to a safe and secure cyberspace where their fundamental freedoms and human rights are respected. By addressing these disparities at an early age and investing in basic digital skills through quality basic education across the income levels, neighborhoods, and regions, we have a unique opportunity to advance the participation of disadvantaged groups, including women and girls, in advanced ICT or business studies and pursue a professional path in the digital economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Thank you for this intervention and for sharing with us these ideas that can clearly drive to ensure access to digital for different targets, and particularly women and girls in Africa. Grant, I believe you have further inputs to provide on the inclusion of women and disadvantaged groups in digital skills and entrepreneurship.
Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, I think for me, I'll start with this, that, if we are really serious, of empowering women and girls to enable them to participate in technological initiatives, we then have to first guarantee their basic human rights in education. I think that should be the first base that we all have to depart on. But we see that there are a lot of gender discriminations or barriers that are there, just as the previous speaker has indicated. And this in education, they happen in a number of ways. I'll just give a few examples. When parents are making choices for their children's education, In mostly, you see that, they will say to a girl, you can only do, informational subject. To a boy, you can do technological things because naturally, because of the stereotypes that do exist. When curriculums or school buildings are designed or books are written, we see that, the presentation of what a boy can do and what a girl can do is always differentiated. When teachers are trained or remunerated, when classroom or students interaction happen, or when education policies and budgets are developed. These conscious or unconscious acts of discrimination undermine equality in education. Gender segregation in the vocational orientation of adolescents has been well documented, I think, for many decades and in many countries. And we know that on average, men are underrepresented in the fields of education and warfare areas, whereas women are underrepresented in the area of science, technology, and other fields. However, in 2017, if I would just point out some statistics, only 30% of female students in higher education globally shows STEM-related fields. Out of those 5% of those opted for natural science, mathematics, and statistics, while only 8% opted for engineering, manufacturing, and construction, and only 3% chose information and communication technology. These are the fields that we are now considering to be critical for future jobs, but only 3% of those, opted for that. What are some of the solutions so that we don't necessarily just problematize the issue? We are proposing that we need to develop a gender-sensitive and gender-transformative education policies, that aims at building equality among students, including adult education. We need to address gender and cultural biases in education, not only in school learning materials, but and foremost in teaching methods. Male and female participation in schoolwork must include affirmative actions to promote and energize girls and women participation, as well as participation in historic marginalized groups, including those living with disabilities. We also need to establish incentives for companies to hire women in technological areas. And lastly, we need to strengthen the free public university education systems to stimulate women and girls' access to scientific and technological careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant, for your valuable insights. And indeed, we think that we need to break these stereotypes and show the potential of women and girls and push them to be more involved in ICT sector and to get trained on digital skills, and also to develop this gender-sensitive education. So thank you very much for your inputs. Professor Henk Gerard, I would like to get your point of view on the main challenges when it comes to business innovation in the African continent, and the concrete approaches and strategies that should be put in place to address these challenges.
Thank you, Asma, for giving the floor to me. It's really impressive to listen to all these stories and experiences. And maybe I can add just a few remarks, because I've been active in the Southern Africa region since '85. I've been involved with educating over thousands and thousands of students at bachelor and master's level. And also I have educated or supervised 20 PhD students in Africa. The majority of them are women, so that's a good point. I would like to make two major points. You asked me about business innovation, but maybe I would call it not an innovation, but an innovation. And what do I mean with this word? Well, for instance, if we look at the war in Ukraine nowadays, then that might raise a number of food security issues in Africa. And one of my PhD holders a few years ago, he focused on food security, and he combined it, endogenous knowledge, with, let's say, the latest knowledge on AI and all these technical things. So he focused as a very engaged figure, a person on the issue how to bring innovation to food security. And he came up with a platform, a digital platform that social workers could use when they went out to the rural areas and help making use of the indigenous knowledge, combining it with the latest on the food producing insights. He developed an approach which is repeatable, and actually it's now being rolled out in Uganda and Tanzania. And he was very active. He just did it. And that's what I would call an innovation. It's engaged, it's innovative, and it's design and it's an activity. And what you see in all these things, training is fine, and all working on the digital device is very, very important. But don't forget the major point. What are the issues that matter? So many of my PhD holders in Africa, many of the students they have been helping and supervising as masters or bachelors, they focused on real issues. Just to give you a few examples. One lady focused on maternity health in Kampala, how to reduce the number of deaths, women not reaching the center, not being in time to go to the hospital. And she developed a kind of platform where all kinds of services and chat groups could be used all over the country. Maternity health, an issue that matters. Or developing agricultural information services. Or develop a platform where farmers could use the advice to come up with a better poultry farming system. And this is being used in Uganda nowadays. And what about disaster planning? What about water management? What about watershed management? So my second point is, it's not innovation in itself, but try to be engaged. Try to focus on real issues that matter. And that means that, of course, we have to set up training courses on big data and AI and blockchain and smart cities, etc. But that's not a goal in itself. It's much more important to have 4 principles, 4 P's. It should be focused on people, people-centric. It's not something which is global, but it's personalized. Look at the processes underneath, and it should be developed in a participatory way. So my plea is, let's focus all our efforts now on, let's say, 4 P's to educate for innovation. Focus on people, train people that are really boundary spanners, not only a computer engineer or a software engineer or a sociologist, no, boundary spanners. Develop programs at BSc, MSc and PhD level where this engaged, innovative procedure could be developed. Focus on local PhD holders who can develop themselves as engaged scholars. And finally, the last P is perseverance. You should have pleasure in developing all these activities. So to conclude, I would set up training programs focused on issues that matter with the 4 P's in mind in order to have teams of students that engage for digital transformation. You just have to innovate and you just have to do it.
Thank you, Professor Henk. And let's not forget to focus on issues that matter for our continent and for it to evolve. Thank you so much. Now, back to you, Michael. What can governments and policymakers do to support the work of tech academies?
Thank you. I mean, very interesting conversations, but also understanding that we are not, I mean, there are quite a number of people that are trying to do some work in this space. I think the first thing is for governments to appreciate that we are partners in the process of skilling, but also in job creation. That's really the first point. Policy can come once the recognition has happened. The second thing that needs to happen is that the collaboration between academic institutions, mainstream academic institutions, and tech academies, the realization that we need each other. We complete the process that they start when they take on some of these students, and also enable a lot of opportunities that we potentially wouldn't have enabled. I'll tell you, for example, at Refactory, we are taking on students who don't have IT degrees, and they are now finally getting into employment. I can tell you for a fact that we have an average of about 35% female that originally wouldn't have been in the tech space that are now joining the tech space because we've given them an opportunity. So these initiatives respond to the opportunities at a global level. And that means that governments need to have an open mind, need to appreciate that whereas we are not mainstream academic, we are contributing, and therefore we are partners in human capital development. Finally, Asma, is that what we've learned from Refactory over the last years is that there are more people that are willing to try out these things. But because academic institutions tend to focus on academic ability and not allowing people to learn and fail, we need to begin rethinking what is the purpose of education, and is it only academic ability that confirms that you're smart or not smart? And that will take us time to reflect and achieve the results that we want to achieve. But we need to start that conversation, if I could put it that way. And we have these conversations with colleagues from Makerere University, one of the leading entities, leading universities, but also in our own university that we are affiliated to at Clark International University. Must I do computer science in order for us to be part of the technology ecosystem? What are the other roles that I can play in the tech ecosystem? And finally, Asma, is that it is important from a policy perspective to appreciate the end in mind. Our governments are talking about youth unemployment or graduates not employed, but yet they are not receptive significantly to initiatives like ours that are non-conforming to mainstream academic. If I go to the Ministry of Education to get a license or to be registered, I probably wouldn't get it. Why? Because my approach is not aligned to mainstream academic or mainstream education. And so that ability to have space to listen and learn is going to give us an opportunity to then design policies that are accommodative as opposed to restrictive. I'll probably stop it here for now.
Thank you, Michael, for your inputs. That was very insightful. Thank you.
I come to a question to Asma. What are the real impact that you felt and observed already with the Orange Digital Center? What should we do in order to reach even more people who profit from these efforts? Thank you, Asma, for this question. The real impacts are the TPI that we realized in the operation centers, meaning we trained 110,000 young people. We supported 280 startups with between 40 to 50% of women who are trained in our centers, and 80% of the young people that have been trained have found a job or are able to set up their own startup. At the end of this training, we have a speed recruiting days where we on all our partners to recruit our trained people in our centers. All those who've been trained by us and who are looking for a job are recruited immediately, and there are other young people who prefer to set up their own startup, and when they do so, they participate in the incubator startup program. Well, reach even more people. Yes, we have to. There are many, and especially in all African territories, there's a very high demand of this kind of training. More we are numerous, more we have solid partners, more we can reach a higher amount of people. This is what I mentioned already. We have GIZ, we have Google, we have Amazon with us already as partners, but we need other partners still. Technological partners, donor partners, to reach the highest number of people, especially out in the regions, in the rural regions. More we reach young people in the regions, less there will be delinquency, there will be a criminalization of the young people, there will be less joblessness, etc., high employability. It's a real will of the government to integrate these partners, the donors, technological partners. It's very important to also put all our force, our powers together in order to support, train the young people, create a startup ecosystem in the countries. And I think with this basis, we can really win the battle of against the digital divide, and especially in the countries where Orange is already present, the 18 countries in Middle East and Africa, plus the countries of Europe and France together. I think it's very important to group up all our efforts and powers to obtain our objectives. Thank you. Thank you, Asma. So we've really understood the main reasons and objectives of your program. Thank you so much.
One last question to Agnieszka before we move to the audience questions, although I'm seeing that our panelists are answering the questions in the chat. Agnieszka, how could increased Africa-Europe cooperation support the efforts of growing the talent base for digital entrepreneurs and innovation?
Thank you very much, Asma. Before I directly answer the question, I would like to address the challenge raised by Michael just a couple of minutes ago about the recognition and portability of flexible and alternative learning pathways for digital skills. I mean, it's really an important question. And I would like to highlight here a recent Commission proposal on a European harmonized approach to micro-credentials. This is something for the European Union, but which can be a source of inspiration for further Africa-Europe collaboration. This approach will support the recognition, accessibility, and portability of flexible learning pathways for digital skills training that exists. So you know, we can see how to use this experience for our future collaboration. So now directly, Asma, to your question. You may have heard about Global Gateway Strategy. It is a European strategy to boost smart, clean and secure links around the world in digital, energy and transport sectors, and to strengthen health, education and research systems around the world. The first big initiative under the strategy was the Africa-EU investment package that was endorsed by the leaders during the EU-African Union Africa Summit last February. Investment in digital education, including digital skills, featured really high in this package and in the discussions among the leaders. Let me mention just several of the actions to which we all collectively committed. The international dimension of the Erasmus Plus program has been scaled up with more than 570 million euros to support Africa-Europe cooperation in higher education and vocational and professional training. The Erasmus Plus program in Sub-Saharan Africa will support exchanges between higher education institutions and VET providers from Sub-Saharan Africa and EU member states. It will do so to enable tertiary education and training institutes to enhance alignment of learning with the needs of the labor market and support universities fully engaged in the complex processes of innovation. Digital and entrepreneurship skills and engagement of higher education institutions with the private sector will be given a very high priority. As was also mentioned by other panelists, we also fully recognize the importance of education and training to work transition by supporting work-based learning and traineeship. As such, we will provide mobility scholarships for students to benefit from digital traineeship opportunities throughout the continent through also the intra-African mobility action. We are also working on a regional teachers initiative through which we want to enhance digital skills training for teachers. I think Grant or Michael also mentioned the role of teachers. This will improve the ability of teachers to support digital literacy and strengthen the digital competence of learners in primary and secondary education. On another front yet, the EU-funded African-European Digital Innovation Bridge initiative comes in support of digital entrepreneurships, facilitating a network of African and European digital innovation hubs to develop a common African-European digital innovation ecosystem and establish joint innovation clusters for global challenges. With regards to professional and vocational training, we support partner countries in Africa to improve the effectiveness of the VET systems so that they are more demand-driven and responsive to emerging labor market opportunities, for example, through traineeships, work-based learning, and employment subsidies, to facilitate the transition to the world of work. To give you concrete examples of our work in local context, we will support digital literacy and basic digital skills as a transversal skill in Senegal and Uganda, and support specialized digital skills trainings in Kenya, Mozambique, and Gabon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka, for these inputs and for discussing about these actions and initiatives that whether are set in place or will be set in place to support the growing talent of youth in Africa. Thank you. Maybe we have some time for one last question for Grant. Grant, what are your views on the role of the education systems when it comes to the topics at hand, business innovation, startups, and digital entrepreneurship?
Okay, thank you so much, Asma. I think, my view on this is that we first have to look into what is the purpose of education. And for me, the purpose of education is to build knowledge that dignifies life and develops the full potential of people to live in peace with justice and equality. This, of course, includes all economic and social and cultural dimensions, including business. For those who find in business a way to earn a living, education should provide them with the knowledge and skill necessary to do so, including a strong sense of justice and fairness. The best contribution that education can offer to digital entrepreneurship and the business world is to build values of equality and justice. And this is only possible in the context of democracy and faithful adherence to human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you so much for your inputs. Now we are coming to the end of our panel. And before we wrap up, I wanted to ask our dear panelists to share with us in 1 minute their valuable takeaways and conclusions. I perhaps will start with Asma.
For me, I've said it, I'll say it again. The most important aspect is to give to dispense trainings in the digital field, informatics, IT, anything concerning digital, social media, etc. So I think our countries will develop thanks to digital, without support, without training, without really taking the education to a higher level, the African continent will be left behind. So what is very important is that the African Union, the European Union, the GIZ, and all those organizations will have an important power for the development of the African continent, will develop partnerships, and this public partnerships are so important to make progress. The development of capacities in Africa, and especially give a better future to these young people, give them the possibility to find a dignified job that have a higher added value. Thank you very much again for P40US for having given me the opportunity to present our Orange Digital Centers on the digital invitation and our training that we offer. You know, our targets are groups are young people, but especially women and children, for give them the possibility to find better jobs, of a higher value, etc. So it's important to have solid public-private partnerships and give the African youth covers and reaches African youth on the whole continent, everywhere. More than 110,000 young people have been trained already. We need to continue Digital Africa in order to have African digital champions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Asma.
Merci, Asma. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think my key takeaway is collaboration, and we need to see Africa talking to each other. We need to see these initiatives converging into a Pan-African platform where we are collaborating. Why? Because we're speaking to the same challenge. We're speaking to addressing the unemployment, but also digital presents the greatest opportunity. I was talking to a friend of mine who told me, for you to export software, you don't need trade license, you don't need a truck, you don't need freight, you just need a right connection. You need to have the device, and then you're working from any part of the world or supporting any part of the world. It's the lowest hanging fruit for us at the African level if you're going to be part of the digital economy. And so for me, it is collaboration. Let's synergize, let's bring these efforts together, because the more we do it, the more we build a better program, the more we're able to standardize these frameworks. And finally, let's invest in supporting academia to realize that we are not creating parallel initiatives. We are coexisting to co-create, but also to solve the biggest challenge, unemployment. And that's the ultimate end. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having been part of this.
Thank you, Michael. Agnieszka, to you.
Thank you very much. I think that we were all very much complementary in our presentations and echoing each other and reinforcing some messages. So it was really a very much enjoyable experience. And thank you for this. And thank you for bringing a great panel for the discussion. I would have two key points to conclude with and to echo what colleagues have said. The first is indeed the importance of the multi-stakeholder approach, of collaboration, of putting together the education institutions, training providers, private sector educators to collaborate around the issues that we discussed. And second, the quite of a general point that we do not think about the digital skills only as a purely technical skills, but rather as a digital competence that also encompass soft skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, communication and collaboration. which not only prepare youth for the 21st century economy and labor market, but also for the 21st century citizenship. And I would say that these are common challenges that we have in Europe and in Africa. So with this, I would like to conclude and thank you once again for having me on the panel and for the exchanges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Professor Henk, the floor is yours.
What can I add here? You are just raised the exact right point. So focus on issues that matter, be it food security nowadays, or climate issues, or all kind of issues, local or globally in the continent. But I do hope that private and public sector, academia and organizations and industry can work together, cooperate, communicate, because it's not separated. They have to engage for the digital transformation. And you can use the teams. For instance, my PhD student, she was working on maternity health. And when she was working, she had bachelor students, but also local students and people in the local tribute, in the local village to work together with her. So these youngsters all work together to come up with a nice, very nice digital solution, which is really contributing to health in the continent. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Professor Henk. We will close with Grant.
Yes, thank you so much, for inviting us. Always, we come from civil society, and it is always important also for us to sit on this table, to have a discussion, just as others said, that the most important thing is for us to collaborate, to work together for one particular agenda. And I think something that has come out very clearly, from what I've heard from all the panelists, is that, if we want to make progress, everything else starts with education. So we really have to ensure that, we are creating access for women, for children, for all marginalized groups to be able to access education. And the most important part is that we have to ensure that there is adequate financing, adequate funding, that is being provided in these schools for our learners to be able to access education, because we can't go for the higher end issue before we address the access issue. And also the most important part of it being the financing issue. We have to ensure that, there is adequate resources for our learners. So that, I think, is very, very important, because otherwise it will be very difficult for us to talk of technical issues if we haven't addressed the basic issues that require anybody else to progress in life. So, but thank you so much for having me. It was really a joy to listen to the most exciting presentation from others. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Grant. I would like to take one final moment of your time to thank the D4D Hub for hosting and organizing this beautiful event. And of course, my deepest thanks to our dear panelists for the quality of this exchange and all the valuable recommendations and ideas shared today. Finally, I would like to also thank the audience for their attention and the many questions that were submitted, and I hope that we answered most of them. And I hope you all enjoyed this session, and let's look forward to renewing this multi-stakeholder forum experience. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.